Hi, my name is Sonya Amrita, and this is the first of 3 videos in which I'm going to talk to you about the journey of awakening to God and the journey of healing from childhood wounds and trauma. And though these 2 paths are often considered to be distinct and separate, my experience is that they can feed each other. They can accelerate each other, and healing can take a whole new level of liberation and freedom, and awakening can deepen simultaneously. It was really important to me. I was really called to share this information because I see a lot of confusion about this in spiritual communities. And this journey of awakening and healing together was such an important part of my experience. So in these 3 videos, I'll be sharing my insights from my personal experience, as well as the insights and learnings from 15 years of working with clients as a teacher and healer. When I talk about the dark side of awakening, I don't necessarily mean the dark night of the soul, although that can be a part of it. What I'm talking about is a kind of phenomenon that happens when somebody's begun to awaken, or sometimes even just begun to commit to the awakening journey, or sometimes after a series of awakenings or a profound awakening. What happens is, for people who've had childhood trauma or some deep wounds, is that despite years of therapy, sometimes an old emotion, an energy, an old story will start to surface, sometimes in a very, very dramatic way. This can be incredibly confusing for people because they think that they've handled it, especially if they've done a lot of healing work, a lot of work on themselves, and have been on a spiritual journey for a long time. It can feel like they're being pulled backwards into their old story, and it can feel like they're being pulled further away from the divine instead of moving forward towards it. And what I've learned is that when this stuff comes up in the awakening journey, it's a whole different kind of thing than when we're actually just in the healing journey. These emotions and imprints that come up, they're actually meant to be liberated. They're a whole different kind of gift, a whole different kind of opportunity. When you begin on the awakening journey, whether you've just taken the first step or you've already begun to have a series of awakenings, you can experience the light, the freedom, and the love of the divine. And again, this is the case even if you're just, quote-unquote, a newbie on the path, because if you're called to awakening, my experience is that something in you already knows that freedom and that light and that love. But here's the rub, is that when you've had childhood trauma or you have some leftover childhood wounds, that when you begin to have that freedom, light, and love enter into your body, everything in you wants to experience that light and love too. Everything in you wants that freedom. And over time, everything in you is going to come up and ask you for that kind of freedom, light, and love. So when these old wounds begin to resurface for you, this isn't necessarily something that's pulling you back. This is a way of your being saying, please help me awaken deep down inside. Now here's the thing, is that these deep, unconscious, sometimes subconsciously held wounds inside of you, they don't have a voice that can say, excuse me, you know that little dark part in there? Could you bring some light and love into that? Because it could really use some healing right now. It doesn't have that voice. What it has is its own unique story. It has its emotion. So what is it going to say to you? It's going to say, I'm lonely, I'm stuck, I'm forsaken, I'm wounded, I'm abandoned, I'm terrified. That's the voice that it has. And if your childhood trauma happened in early childhood, it might not even have that. It might just be a vibration that arises in the body. The thing about these things coming up on the awakening journey is that, again, this isn't a sliding back into some old therapy that you haven't completed. This is a call to awaken. This is a unique phase of the journey, and I call it the 3rd phase of healing. So I'll back up and describe what I call 3 phases of healing. In the first phase of healing, you're realizing that there are wounds and experiences from childhood that need some loving attention, and perhaps you're starting to search for the right therapist or helper for you on the journey. In the second phase of healing, you're embarking on that healing with great intensity and devotion, and you are meeting with a therapist, working with healers, and doing a lot of work on yourself. And though the second phase of healing can have a spiritual component, a whole other possibility opens up for us in the third phase of healing. Now, probably if you're watching this video, you're either deep in the second phase of healing or you've completed the second phase of healing. And if you've been called to awaken, then you have the opportunity to take the wounds inside of you, to take the deepest imprints of trauma and liberate them in a whole new way. So I'll say to you, I want to share that when I first began on my second phase of healing, nobody told me that the third phase of healing was possible. Nobody talked about liberation. In fact, someone actually outright said to me that I was going to be stuck living with the identity of being a survivor of rape for the rest of my life. And even when I started the awakening journey, my spiritual teachers were amazing and they taught me a lot about liberation, but because they didn't specifically say that even my deepest wounds and imprints from being traumatized as a child could be liberated, I didn't know it was possible until I stumbled upon it myself. And what I experienced in this third phase of healing was a release in the body of some of those holdings, some of the fear, some of the survival fear, a lot of the emotions that had been stored in the body. And I also experienced, and this might be the most important part, the release of all of the identity of being someone who had a difficult childhood and who survived rape. It was an incredibly liberating experience, and it felt to me, feels to me still, like it completed my healing in a certain way. And it also felt like it deepened my awakening and allowed me to embody and integrate what I was coming to know in my awakening journey. What I've observed in the last 15 years working with my students and my clients is that if someone is really committed to awakening and they're willing to do whatever it takes to awaken and liberate and heal, and they're not afraid to face the little dark side of awakening that might be arising for them, then as much liberation as they want to experience is possible for them. And so in this next video, what I'm going to talk to you about is an example of one of my clients who hit that wall right after the second phase of healing where the dark side of awakening was happening for her. She couldn't find the solution because her old healing tools and her old spiritual tools weren't working for her. So I'm going to talk about why these two kinds of tools don't always work for us in the third phase of healing and what can be possible. And I'll talk about how she had an incredible transformation in her third phase of healing. I'm so deeply grateful to share this information with you and that you took the time to sit with it and watch it and be present with me. Thank you. And if you know of anyone in your life who could benefit from this information or who could feel just very affirmed by hearing this information, please share it. It's a gift to your community. It's a gift to all of us. Thank you again for watching. Blessings for your journey. Namaste.